The broadcast, the last message. Elena Martinez stood in the center of the cold metal chamber, her hands bound behind her back with alien restraints that hummed with energy. The 19-year-old had her mother's gentle eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Blood trickled from a cut above her left eyebrow, but she held her head high as 3 cameras focused on her face. The Kethrin commander, a towering figure with scales that shimmered like oil, stepped into the frame. His forearms moved with deliberate precision as he adjusted the broadcast equipment. The alien's voice carried the authority of someone who had never been challenged. "Citizens of the human colonies," the commander spoke in perfect English, his words dripping with contempt. "You will witness the price of defiance. Your species sent this child to negotiate terms you are not worthy to discuss." Elena's breathing remained steady despite the pulse rifle aimed at her temple. She looked directly into the main camera, knowing that somewhere among the stars, her father would be watching. The broadcast was being transmitted across 17 human worlds, reaching over 4 billion people in real time. "Your expansion into the Vega sector ends now," the Kethrin continued. "Your colonization ships will turn back. Your mining operations will cease. This is the consequence of human arrogance." The camera zoomed closer to Elena's face. She could see her reflection in the lens, and behind it, the red recording light that meant billions were watching. Her lips moved, forming words that only someone who knew her well would understand. It was the sign language her father had taught her as a child, a private code they used when she was scared. "I love you, Papa. Find them." The moment everything changed on Earth, in the United Nations Crisis Center, Secretary General Williams watched the feed with growing horror. Around him, generals and diplomats argued in raised voices, but their words seemed distant and meaningless. The girl on the screen was Marcus Martinez's daughter, the child of humanity's most respected diplomatic envoy. "Where is Commander Martinez?" Williams demanded. "Still at the Titan research station," replied General Chen. "We sent the emergency signal, but he hasn't responded." The Kethrin commander raised his weapon. Elena closed her eyes for just a moment, then opened them again. When she spoke, her voice carried across space with crystal clarity. "Tell my father that I kept my promise. Tell him the stars remember everything." The pulse rifle discharged with a sound like thunder. The feed continued for exactly 7 more seconds, showing Elena's body collapsing to the cold floor. Then the EIJ transmission cut to the Kethrin Empire's symbol, a twisted spiral that now seemed to mock every human who saw it. The galaxy screams. The reaction was immediate and visceral. On Mars, construction workers stopped their machines and wept. On Europa station, soldiers gathered around screens, their faces contorted with rage. Children on the outer rim colonies cried for mothers they didn't understand why the universe had become so cruel. But it was the silence that followed that truly terrified those who understood warfare. For 17 minutes, no human ship moved. No communication came from any military installation. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for humanity's response. In the Kethrin capital ship, Commander Zarthek allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans would retreat now. They would understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. The girl's death would save countless Kethrin lives by preventing a war that would have been costly, even if inevitable. He did not know that 7 minutes after Elena Martinez took her last breath, something had awakened in the darkness between the stars. The Titan Protocol Marcus Martinez sat in complete darkness in his quarters on Titan Research Station. The emergency communication had reached him exactly 11 minutes after the broadcast ended. He had watched the recording 3 times, each viewing bringing a different kind of pain. The first time, he saw his daughter die. The second time, he caught her final message in sign language. The third time, he noticed something else entirely. The symbol carved into the wall behind her, barely visible in the shadows. It was ancient, older than human space travel, and it meant only one thing. The Kethrins had made their statement in the wrong place. Marcus stood and walked to his desk. His hands moved with mechanical precision as he opened a drawer that hadn't been touched in 15 years. Inside lay a single black card with no markings except for a sequence of numbers that glowed faintly in the dark. He inserted the card into his personal terminal. The screen flickered once, then displayed a simple message. Protocol authorization. Required. Marcus spoke clearly into the darkness. Ghost 77 Alpha, Elena Martinez. Verification. The stars remember everything. The terminal went silent for 30 seconds. Then deep beneath Titan's surface, machines that had slept for decades began to hum with power. Somewhere in the research station's classified levels, doors that had been sealed since the end of the colony wars slowly opened. The sleeping giant wakes doctor, Sarah Chen, was the first to notice the power fluctuations. As the station's chief scientist, she monitored all energy outputs, and what she saw on her screens made no sense. Power was being diverted to sections of the facility that didn't officially exist. Commander Martinez, she called over the comm system. We're seeing massive power draws from sub-level 7. According to our blueprints, there is no sub-level 7. Marcus's voice came back calm and steady. Dr. Chen, please evacuate all non-essential personnel to the emergency shuttles. You have 1 hour. Sir, what's happening? Something that should have stayed buried. In the depths of Titan Research Station, ancient systems powered up for the first time in decades. The Ghost Protocol had been humanity's darkest secret during the colony wars, a program so classified that most of the participants had their memories wiped when it ended. But some things were too important to forget entirely. Marcus descended through levels that existed on no official blueprint. His footsteps echoed in corridors that had been sealed since the peace treaties were signed. At the bottom, in a chamber, carved from Titan's ice, waited something that looked more like a coffin than a spacecraft. The vessel was sleek, black, and absolutely silent. No heat signature, no electromagnetic emissions, no trace that it existed at all. The ship had been designed for one purpose: to ensure that humanity's enemies never forgot the price of crossing certain lines. The point of no return as Marcus approached the craft, his reflection showed in its polished surface. He looked older than his 53 years, worn down by decades of diplomatic work and the weight of secrets he could never share. But his eyes held something that hadn't been there since the colony wars ended: purpose. The ship's hatch opened without a sound. Inside, the cockpit was Spartanly functional, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. As Marcus settled into the pilot's seat, systems came online automatically, recognizing genetic markers and brain patterns that had been coded into the ship's memory decades ago. A holographic display showed the current location of the Kethran fleet. They were still in the same system where they had murdered his daughter, probably celebrating their successful demonstration of power. They had no idea what was coming. Marcus placed his hand on the ship's control interface. The neural link established, instantly connecting his mind directly to the craft's systems. For the first time in years, Marcus Martinez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Elena," he whispered to the darkness. "Papa's coming." The ship launched without fanfare, slipping away from Titan Station like a shadow moving through deeper shadows. It left no energy signature, triggered no sensors, and appeared on no tracking systems. To the universe, it simply didn't exist. But Marcus Martinez was no longer just a grieving father. He was something far more dangerous. A ghost returning to life, carrying with him the accumulated fury of an entire species that had just learned the price of mercy. The journey to the Kethran fleet would take exactly 43 minutes at maximum stealth velocity. When he arrived, the galaxy would remember why humanity had once been feared by every species that dwelt among the stars. The Ghost Protocol was active. The hunt had begun. The reckoning, the invisible approach, the Kethran Imperial. Fleet hung in space like a collection of deadly jewels, their ships reflecting the light of the system's twin suns. Commander Zarthek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, reviewing reports from across the Empire. The human colonies had gone silent after the broadcast, exactly as predicted. There would be no war, no costly battles, just the quiet submission of a species that had finally learned its place. 43 minutes after Elena Martinez died, every sensor array in the Kethrin fleet simultaneously registered the same reading. Nothing. No new contacts. No energy signatures. No gravitational anomalies. The space around them remained as empty as it had been for hours, which was why nobody noticed when something that didn't exist began moving through their defensive perimeter. Marcus Martinez's ship, designation Ghost 7, slipped between the Kethrin vessels like smoke through a net. Its hull absorbed all electromagnetic radiation, its engines produced no heat signature, and its mass was distributed across quantum fields that made it effectively weightless. The ship was invisible not because it hid, but because it convinced the universe it wasn't there. Inside the craft, Marcus watched the tactical display with the patience of a predator. Each Kethrin ship was marked with detailed schematics, crew complements, and defensive capabilities. The Ghost Protocol had been gathering intelligence on potential enemies for decades, even during peacetime. Especially during peacetime. His target was obvious, the flagship where his daughter had been murdered. The chamber where she died was still warm with her blood, still broadcasting the Kethrin symbol of victory to anyone foolish enough to watch. The first cut Marcus began with the perimeter ships, small patrol craft that served as the fleet's early warning system. Ghost 7 approached the first vessel from below, matching its orbital velocity perfectly, before extending a single mechanical arm equipped with a quantum cutter. The tool sliced through the ship's hull like it was made of paper, creating an opening exactly large enough for a human to pass through. The patrol craft's crew never knew they had been boarded. Their life support simply failed, quietly and without alarm, as if the ship itself had decided they no longer deserved to breathe. Marcus moved through the vessel like a shadow, downloading data from their computer cores and planting something far more valuable: doubt. The ship's final transmission would report all systems normal, but their navigational computers would now carry a virus that would spread to every Kethrin vessel they communicated with. He repeated this process 4 more times before anyone noticed. The patrol ships had gone silent. "Commander," reported the fleet's communications officer, her scaled face showing concern. "Patrol units 7 through 11 are not responding to routine check-ins." Zarthik turned from his contemplation of the stars. "Send a recovery team, probably just equipment malfunctions." The recovery team found the ships exactly where they should be, their crews dead at their stations with no signs of violence, no hull breaches, no indication of what had killed them. The only clue was a message carved into each ship's primary computer core in precise human lettering. Elena Martinez remembers. The hunt intensifies as news of the mysterious deaths spread. Through the fleet, Marcus had already moved to the next phase. Ghost 7 positioned itself beneath the flagship's massive hull, a position that should have been impossible to reach undetected. But the ship's quantum stealth systems made it a mathematical impossibility rather than a physical one. Marcus studied the ship's schematics on his display. The Dominion's edge was a fortress in space, bristling with weapons and shielded by energy barriers that could repel the combined firepower of a human battle group. Its crew of 8,000 included some of the Kethrin Empire's finest warriors. None of that mattered to a ghost. The quantum cutter made short work of the flagship's hull plating. Marcus entered through a maintenance shaft that led directly to the ship's computer core, following blueprints that had been stolen decades ago by intelligence operatives, whose names were classified beyond even his security clearance. The Kethrin ship's interior was a maze of corridors designed for beings twice human height, but Marcus moved through them with the confidence of someone who had memorized every passage. His footsteps made no sound on the metal floors. His breathing produced no condensation in the recycled air. To every sensor and security system on the ship, he simply wasn't there. The core, the computer center of the Dominion's edge, occupied 3 levels of the ship's interior, protected by guards, automated defenses, and encryption protocols that had never been broken by human technology. Marcus walked past all of it as if it were invisible. The guards saw nothing because their brains couldn't process what their eyes detected. The automated systems registered no intruder because their sensors were designed to detect matter and energy, not the quantum shadow that Marcus had become. The encryption protocols were irrelevant because he wasn't trying to break them. He was going to replace them. Marcus connected his ship's computer directly to the Kethrin network through a quantum interface that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Information flowed both ways. He downloaded their fleet positions, command codes, and communication protocols while uploading something that would transform their most secure systems into weapons aimed at their own hearts. The process took exactly 7 minutes. When it was complete, Marcus had access to every ship in the Kethrin fleet, every computer system in their empire, and every communication network they had ever established. But more importantly, he had planted Elena's message in the deepest cores of their technology. The message spreads across the Kethrin fleet. Computer screens began flickering with an image that shouldn't exist. It was Elena Martinez in her final moments, but not as the Kethrins had recorded her death. Instead, it showed her signing her final words in the language only her father understood, her face peaceful and determined despite the weapon aimed at her head. The image appeared for exactly 7 seconds on every screen, in every ship, throughout the entire fleet. Then it vanished, leaving only the words carved into their computer systems. The stars remember everything. Commander Zarthek stared at his command display as reports flooded in from across the fleet. Every ship was experiencing the same phenomenon. Their most secure systems had been compromised by something that shouldn't be possible. "How many ships are affected?" he demanded. "All of them, sir," his communications officer replied, her voice shaking. "Every vessel in the fleet, every computer core, every data storage system. It's like the human girl's message has become part of our own technology." Zarthek's forearms clenched into fists. "Find the source. Scan for enemy vessels, energy signatures, anything that could explain this." The scans revealed nothing. Space around the fleet remained empty, peaceful, undisturbed, but deep in the flagship's computer core something new was growing, spreading through their networks like a digital cancer that transformed everything it touched. The revelation: Marcus Martinez stood in the exact chamber where his daughter had died. The bloodstain was still visible on the floor, a dark mark that the Kethrins had left as a trophy of their victory. He knelt beside it, placing his hand on the cold metal that had been warmed by Elena's life. "I kept my promise too, little star," he whispered. Around him, the ship's internal defenses were systematically shutting down, not failing, not being overridden, but simply recognizing that he belonged there more than anyone else did. The quantum virus he had planted was rewriting the fundamental code that defined friend and enemy, transforming the entire Kethrin fleet into an extension of his will. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Marcus stood and turned toward the sound, his expression calm as a squad of Kethrin soldiers burst into the chamber. They raised their weapons, targeting systems locking onto his position, fingers tightening on triggers that would unleash enough energy to vaporize a human body. Nothing happened. The soldiers stared at their weapons in confusion as targeting systems failed, power cells drained, and tactical displays showed error messages in human script. Around them, the ship's lighting dimmed to red, and Elena's voice began speaking from every speaker in the vessel. "Tell my father that I kept my promise. Tell him the stars remember everything." "Who are you?" Commander Zarthek's voice carried across the ship's communication system as he realized his flagship was no longer under his control. Marcus looked directly into the security camera that was transmitting his image throughout the fleet. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I am Marcus Martinez. You killed my daughter. Now you belong to me." The new order, what happened next, became legend throughout the galaxy, though few believed the reports when they first emerged. The entire Kethrin Imperial fleet, without firing a single shot or losing a single ship, simply changed sides. Every vessel in their armada began broadcasting the same message, an image of Elena Martinez along with a new understanding of what humanity truly was beneath its diplomatic facade. The Kethrins hadn't just killed a girl. They had awakened something that had been sleeping since the end of the colony wars. Marcus Martinez walked through the flagship's corridors as its new master, followed by Kethrin soldiers, who now served him with the same loyalty they had once shown their emperor. The quantum virus had rewritten more than just computer code. It had transformed the very concept of authority aboard every ship in the fleet. Commander Zarthek found himself standing at attention in his own command center, unable to understand why his body refused to obey his conscious mind. Around him, his crew worked efficiently at their stations, carrying out orders from the human who had somehow become their commanding officer. "This is impossible," Zarthek managed to say. "You are one man against an entire fleet." Marcus smiled, and for the first time since Elena's death, it reached his eyes. "I'm not one man, Commander. I'm a father. And my daughter taught me something important before she died." "What?" "The stars remember everything, including every crime you've committed, every species you've conquered, every child you've murdered for the sake of your empire's expansion." Marcus gestured to the main display, where star charts were appearing that showed the true extent of Kethran atrocities across the galaxy. Entire civilizations wiped out. Peaceful worlds burned from orbit. Billions of lives snuffed out in the name of imperial glory. "Your empire ends today," Marcus continued. "Not through war, not through conquest, but through justice. Every ship in your fleet will now serve a different purpose, protecting the worlds you once threatened, rebuilding what you destroyed, ensuring that Elena's death was the last unnecessary sacrifice in this galaxy." The Father's promise as word. Of the Kethran fleet's transformation spread across human space, Marcus Martinez made one final broadcast. He stood in the chamber where his daughter had died, but now Elena's image smiled down from every screen in the Kethran armada. "My fellow humans," he began, his voice carrying across 17 worlds to 4 billion people who had watched their children threatened by alien aggression. "Today we learned that there are some lines that should never be crossed, some prices that should never be paid." He paused, looking at the bloodstain that marked where Elena had made her final stand. "My daughter Elena believed in peace. She believed in diplomacy. She believed that different species could coexist without violence or hatred. She died for those beliefs, and in dying she proved something that I hope the galaxy never forgets." Marcus looked directly into the camera, and every human watching saw the depth of love and loss and determination in his eyes. Humanity will go to any length to protect its children. We will cross any distance, pay any price, and become anything necessary to ensure that no parent ever again has to watch their child die for the entertainment of those who mistake mercy for weakness. The broadcast ended, but its message echoed across the galaxy for generations. The Kethran Empire became humanity's first and most loyal ally, their fleet serving as guardians of peace rather than instruments of conquest. And in the depths of space, other species whispered warnings to their young about the humans who smiled and offered friendship with one hand, while keeping the other ready to deliver justice that could rewrite the laws of physics themselves. Elena Martinez had died believing in peace. Her father had shown the galaxy that sometimes peace required a different kind of strength entirely. The stars remembered everything, and now so did everyone else.